Hey guys, how are you all beautiful people? Hope all of you are doing fine. And yes, this is next part of Godlike Hokage in Naruto. The Gura Gura no Mi is known as the strongest fruit in the world of One Piece. In Naruto world, the blood limit would grant the strongest power for those ninjas. But what if the Gura Gura no Mi is found in the world of Naruto and after it is eaten it will be like a blood limit power? Well, the MC just took that fruit. This story begins before the Second Ninja War by 2 years. So let's start without any delay. Danza didn't even consider that Naito could win the duel and kill Tsunade. After all, Tsunade is a Chunin. In his opinion, Naito was definitely gonna get killed. That was the reason for sending him a ninja from the route to rescue or heal Naito if anything got wrong. He wanted to make Naito his tool. But those two situations didn't even happen. What happened was a third most unlikely situation. That kid, in just 3 months, has grown up to this point. At this moment, even Danza was a little bit amazed. Naito's talent is terrifying. The word genius is not enough to describe him, he's a monster. But fortunately, he can still control himself. He took a deep breath, then he slowly closed his eyes. Not far away from Konoha. A separate base. This is where Orochimaru established his base and dedicated himself to do some experiments. Did you bring Naito's body, or did that boy reverse the situation? HolyOniiSama, you Naito killed Tsunade. A ninja responded, his eyes revealed how shocked he was, it seems like he couldn't calm down. After he heard this sentence, Orochimaru got a little bit surprised, then he revealed a strange smile. As expected, this kid isn't a normal one, the Uchiha, Tsunade, even Sarutobi underestimated him. Things got more interesting. Orochimaru said that with an evil smile on his face, no one knew what he was thinking. Naito at a very young age won against a Chunin. Although this is enough to shock a lot of people, it's still an understandable growth. In the original story, there was also the talented Hatake Kakashi, who graduated from the ninja school at the age of 5, and then at the age of 6 become a Chunin. The Hokage office. The third Hokage Sarutobi was sitting there. Until that moment, there was still a big surprise on the face of Sarutobi. It's unbelievable. Yeah, that kid surprised everyone. Someone whispered these words. Next, to Sarutobi's desk, there was still one person standing there. He had silver hair and was wearing the uniform of Konoha Shinobis. However, his identity wasn't as simple as a normal shinobi. He's the father of Hatake Kakashi. Sarutobi finally took a deep breath and calmed down for a moment. Sakumo, what should I do next? I think we should graduate him early, and maybe we should recruit him into the Anbu. Sakumo took a moment to think, then he said that. Sarutobi looked a little bit frown. After this incident, the Uchiha won't keep silent. Naito is too smart, he will definitely guess that I abandoned him that day. Hokage-sama, you don't have to think about this so much. Sakumo looked calm at Sarutobi then said, it's true that he's a smart kid, but even if he guessed what happened behind the scene, this won't change anything. He's a shinobi of Konoha after all, he got nowhere else to go. What he gonna face now is not only the Uchiha but also Danza. Because he's smart and wisdom, he will definitely understand that the best choice for him is to be under your cover and become a member of the Anbu. The words of Sakumo inspired Sarutobi. Yes. Naito got no place to go. Even if he guessed what happened, and knew we abandoned him, he will also understand that being on our side is the only choice he got. However, but Sarutobi was still slightly hesitating. But I am afraid that after this incident, he will. It doesn't matter. Sakumo calmly responded. He sounded very confident. I will be there, he's a ninja of Konoha, nothing gonna change that. Moreover, Sakumo smiled then continued, Tsunade established a good relationship with Naito, didn't she? It seems so. Sarutobi nodded and finally smiled. Sakumo was the current leader of the Anbu. With Sakumo being his leader, he can keep an eye on him, even if Naito grew up more, as long as there's Tsunade, they can always control him. Moreover, he's now Tsunade disciple. And with considering the good relationship he has with Tsunade. With this connection, even if Naito is dissatisfied with what happened in this incident, these emotions should fade over time. Well, then you can start the paperwork on graduating him from the school, then, join him to the Anbu as an alternate member. Sarutobi finally decided after a little bit of thinking. Only as an alternate member. Well, although he won against Samue, it doesn't change the fact that he's still so young. It's better if we wait for him to grow up more. Indeed, it's true. Sakumo nodded. Sarutobi stood up then reached the window of his office. It was overlooking the entire village. A peaceful one. On his face, there was a slight sense of complex feelings. He is the Hokage. What he is carrying on his shoulders is the entire village. Therefore, he needed to always consider the overall situation. As long as the result was in the favor of Konoha to always move in a better direction, he would do anything. This is the will of fire. For Konoha, everything can be sacrificed. Sarutobi was always thinking about how he can control the other function in Konoha. He closed his eyes slowly while he was thinking about that. Even in the original story, this is what he was always thinking about, making Konoha a better place. At the corner of the street. A place that was known as the home of Naito. Naito won the life and death duel against Uchiha Samue, but this news didn't reach the village. The only people who knew the outcome were the high-level people in Konoha. Even the Uchiha didn't spread the word out because it was simply a shame to the extreme where they felt like it's not too late to hide the matter. At this time Naito was sitting at home, looking at some items on his table, having a troubled expression on his face. On his table, there was the Konoha forehead protector, a document, and a scroll. The scroll was the one Tsunade gave him. And Konoha's forehead protector receiving it means that he officially has graduated from the ninja school. It wasn't sent to him by the Hokage nor his class teacher, it was sent by the Anbu department. Of course, it's not that hard to guess the reason behind this early graduation. It was because he won against Samue and this graduation should be the instruction of the Hokage himself. Of course, if you win against a Chunin you can't stay as an ungraduated student from the School of Ninja, that will be strange. Early graduation and becoming a shinobi. But this doesn't matter for Naito, and the shinobi status as genin doesn't have much effect at all. The one thing he really cared about was the document that was sent along with the forehead. This document was from the Anbu department, a letter of recruiting him to the Special Assassination and Tactical Squad. Naito didn't need to fill anything in the document. All the information was already written. This is almost like a duty call. This was unexpected to Naito. Sarutobi pulled him directly to the Anbu. Is this a making up for his mistake? Naito shook his head with a strange feeling in his heart. Unfortunately, he already gave up on him once, making up for him won't be this easy. However, in the face of this recruitment, Naito didn't have any reason to refuse, in fact, he's not qualified enough to refuse. The Anbu. I didn't expect that. I thought I would wait until I graduate, then I will simply join Tsunade's team. Naito picked up the document and carefully read it again. There were some details about him in the document, including his fighting power, the fact that he can shatter a B-class ninjutsu, and some information about how he's already reached the level of a Chunin. In the right lower corner there was a number. Next to that number, there were 2 words he didn't notice the first time. Alternate member. Only for the second time, he noticed those words. There was a hint of surprise on his face. Alternate member. All the official members of the Anbu have code names, no wonder he had only numbers. It turns out that he's only an alternate member. However, as an alternate member, Naito no longer had any weird feelings about this matter. Even if he's strong, it seems they only recruited him as an alternate member. The Anbu members need to be familiar with too many things, such as various secret signs, and a variety of seals, and so on. Every qualified member needs to experience a period of time as a normal shinobi before he can be an Anbu. Official Anbu members are very busy. On the other hand, alternate members have much more free time. Moreover, being a member of the Anbu, whether it's a full member or an alternate one, comes with many advantages. And it's all written in the document. First of all, training equipment is free of charge. The Anbu department is directly under the cover of the Hokage himself, which makes it the most powerful function in Konoha. And because of that, the Hokage provides any kind of resources to the Anbu. Even if you're an alternate member, you can have any equipment you want, you can even have a customized one. Of course, this is only the first point. The second point is that you can get access to any kind of B-class ninjutsu scrolls, taijutsu scrolls, and genjutsu too. In short, any ninja in the Anbu department has the right to learn any B-class jutsu. For this reason, only, a lot of shinobi seek to join the Anbu, although they have the most dangerous missions. Because the B-class ninjutsu is the most used, and you will need a life of time to try and figure it out by yourself. But the B-class ninjutsu can get stronger and even weaker depending on the user himself. A B-class ninjutsu cast by a normal shinobi won't be at the same level when it's cast by Sarutobi. In Naito's opinion, the B-class ninjutsu can be divided into 3 grades: low level, mid, and high level. At the last fight he had with Samue, the fire release the latter cast was a low-level B-class ninjutsu, that's why he could easily shatter it with one punch. However, practicing the same ninjutsu for a long time can make it even stronger. Also, the nature of the chakra and the amount can also make it better. With these terms it can get to the mid-level. In the mid-level, the current power of Naito may not be able to make him blow it with just one punch, but he can block it without any problems. As for the high level, some people like Sarutobi, Danza, etc., can cast a very strong B-class ninjutsu. The power of their casting can be comparable to an A-level ninjutsu. At this high level of a B-class ninjutsu, it will be somewhat very difficult for him to stop it. However, Naito now has the secrets of having a brutal force. With successful learning, combined with the shock, a high-level ninjutsu can be easily wiped out. Only at that time, he will really have the ability to shatter any kind of B-class ninjutsu. Anyway, first, to get ready for the Anbu missions I will need to practice the scroll Tsunade gave me. After he looked at the document, Naito murmured that to himself. At the end of the document, he was being asked to go to the Anbu department to report that he received the document. Moreover, even if he wasn't asked to go to the Anbu department, he was going there anyway. Although he doesn't have any interest in B-class ninjutsu, He wanted to go there to get some taijutsu scrolls. Moreover, some other ninjutsu is very useful too, such as shadow clone technique. As for the A-class ninjutsu, and even the S-class which are stored there too, but most people don't have access to those scrolls. Of course, there's no rule saying that the Anbu doesn't have access to those scrolls. As long as you're a talented and a high-class ninja, you can also get qualified to practice A and S-class ninjutsu. However, high-class ninjutsu is not that easy to control and learn by an average person. Not everyone like Hatake Kakashi, or Uchiha Sasuke. There are a lot of strong shinobi who have not mastered an A-class ninjutsu. Out of the house, Naito went all the way to the secret place of the Anbu, then went all the way down under the grounds of Konoha. The Anbu department is located under the ground too. However, this one is directly under the Hokage building. Moreover, there is also a direct channel connected to the Hokage building so he can easily get to the Anbu department at any time. The place was dark and gloomy. While he was passing by some Anbu, some of them had a white cloak and other had a black one. Some of them seemed curious while passing by him, others just ignored him. All of those people are elite ninjas who have experienced fierce battles. Basically, there was nothing else. Walking straight ahead, soon, Naito walked into the center of the building. At this time, finally, someone approached him, then asked him calmly, "You Naito?" "Yes." "Follow me." The guy was wearing a mask. He spoke calmly while they were walking in the building. "Over there is where you got your missions and hand over reports. Over there is the place where you can get the equipment or customize a special one for yourself, and it's all free charged. Over there is the storage room where you will find all kinds of ninjutsu and taijutsu scrolls." Naito walked in a circle following the Anbu in the building while he was showing him the place. At this time, Naito had a simple understanding of the place. Although this department was mentioned in the original story, there weren't any details written about the building itself. The Anbu department works directly under the order of the Hokage. It's the last defense line of Konoha, and it's the right solution to deal with any kind of situation. Every member of the Anbu is at least a Chunin. Any Anbu member who is lower than a Chunin is an alternate member like Naito. The official members are divided into 4 teams. Each team has a captain. These captains need to be high-ranked ninja, and they at least need to be at the same level as a Jonin. One of these teams is the Hunter-nin team. The Hunter-nin team is also divided into 3 squads. Every squad has its own leader, which is a high-ranked ninja too. This is the only team in the Anbu that has 3 leaders. These 3 leaders, of course, need to be so strong, and will even have some strong forbidden skills, which makes them the strongest in the whole department. And above all, the leader is the Anbu commander. A complete set of an extremely perfect system. There is 121 official member of the Anbu department. Each one of them is an elite ninja. Anbu dislikes letting anyone know their identities, and as such, most of Konoha's citizens aren't aware of who is and isn't an Anbu. However, the most important function in Konoha is the Anbu department. No matter whether it's the Roots, the Uchiha, or even the Senju, the Anbu always comes first. This is the Hokage's function that controls everything in Konoha. Anbu protects the village from exceptional threats, conduct high-risk missions into enemy territory, and deal with extremely strong ninja. They are also responsible for carrying out assassinations, tracking, surveillance, and missions requiring specially trained ninja. Each Anbu has experienced much more training than ordinary ninjas. Of course, an alternate member, such as Naito, is more relaxed, and he will have simple tasks. After he explained everything to Naito, the masked ninja handed him a mask and the grey uniform signed by a symbol that marks him as an alternate member. Although these ninjas are not completely cold-hearted people like the Roots, they already have been under the mask for so many years, so they basically do not have many affections. Even if it was a shocking situation to see a young man like Naito joining the Anbu, the masked guy didn't seem even concerned. The only thing he was thinking of is Konoha. Among the Anbu, almost every member is like this. After receiving the mask and the uniform, Naito found out that the uniform was exactly tailored to his size. After shaking his head, Naito immediately wore his uniform and put on his mask. After he wore it, the feeling he had when he entered that he didn't belong to this place disappeared. It seems like it's not that hard to integrate with the Anbu. It's indeed a strange feeling to hide behind the mask and look at the world. I already start questioning my identity, that's what he thought of. However, without dazing out any longer, Naito quickly walked to his destination. The first place he heads for was the equipment department. Please give me a chakra induction paper. Naito was a little bit curious about his chakra nature. Although, Naito knew that practicing ninjutsu will be pointless in his situation and every ninjutsu will need to be printed first and that waste a lot of time in the battle, but he thought it will be better if he knew what's his chakra nature anyway. After all, in this world, there's a lot of special shinobis, and Naito will have to be ready for any kind of situation. The person in the room was a lot different from the guy in the Konoha shop. He listened to Naito carefully without saying any words as he walked in and out of the room silently. And finally, he passed a chakra induction paper to Naito. No questions, not even a single sentence. This is the principle of the Anbu, doing tasks without asking any questions. After taking the chakra induction paper, Naito left the store, then injected his chakra into it. At the next moment, the paper wrinkled and then split in two from the middle. Wind and thunder, this is interesting. Although he only had two kinds of chakra nature, Naito felt a little bit happy. Compared to Naruto, who only had the wind at that time, it's still way better. Moreover, the three other elements he didn't have weren't that important to him. On the contrary, having thunder including wind is most effective. Without forgetting about how strong the thunder users are, the Raikages for example. In particular his Cloak of Lightning mode, this technique speeds up neural synapses reaction time and pushes physical prowess to the absolute limit, allowing for tremendous raw speed. A strong technique. This is the technique that Naito always wanted, but it's so hard to learn. But now Naito learned that he has the thunder element. If by any chance he got his hand on that scroll, he will definitely try and practice this technique. However, even if he has it now, he will need to learn how to create and control thunder first. In the original book, Sasuke managed to learn Chidori in just 1 month of time. Sasuke was a very talented fast learner shinobi. The thunder release can give you both strength and speed, and that makes it a very effective element. At the same time, Naito needed to think of a way to combine those two elements he has with his earthquake release. Moreover, the wind and thunder now become the combined nature transformations for the earthquake release. His ability to create shocks won't be questioned anymore. By using 2 or 3 basic nature transformations simultaneously, one can create a completely new elemental nature with unique properties that wouldn't exist on its own. And there's already a lot of shinobis who combined 2 elements to create a new one in history. Which means his bloodline won't be a problem anymore. Naito now has all the conditions, his ability won't be doubted again. Naito walked away from the equipment store. Although Naito wanted to customize his own practice equipment, he felt like he didn't need it for now. The mountains felt better for the meanwhile. There's no need for him to customize anything now. After walking for a short time, Naito arrived at the storage room. There was an Anbu on the door guarding the place. After he saw Naito, he just opened the door for him. It seems like anyone can fool them around and wear a mask to enter the place, but in reality, the department is well guarded. There were a lot of people in the place who seemed like they are keeping an eye on everything happening in the department. It's almost impossible to sneak in here. He walked into the storage room. There was a large number of scrolls, orderly divided into 3 sections: Ninjutsu section, Taijutsu section, and Genjutsu section. The storage room was full of the ninjutsu scrolls more than anything else. The Taijutsu and Genjutsu section couldn't even be compared to the ninjutsu section. The ninjutsu section was divided into divisions. There were various divisions such as wind, thunder, fire, earth. Naito easily found the shadow clone technique scroll he wanted. After that, he headed out to the ninjutsu section, specifically to the wind and thunder divisions, but he couldn't find the ninjutsu he wanted to learn. Even if it's where he wouldn't find it easily, some ninjutsu scrolls must be hidden. Of course, he can't get everything from the very start. However, Naito didn't need to rush things. He may be a greedy person, but he already has the scroll of the brutal force. He can think about learning other stuff after he had practiced this one. Before he left out the place, Naito took another glance at the various scrolls in the Taijutsu section. He thought it won't help him this much. Unexpectedly, he saw some techniques and details he didn't know before. It worked great for him. The Taijutsu section included not only attack and defense, but also comprehensive knowledge about the Taijutsu class. Naito skipped the parts about the attack and defense because he didn't consider these due to his power of shocks. In that division, he found some instructions that there were even better than the one Mato Dai taught him. Although Mato Dai is a powerful user of Taijutsu, his knowledge is limited to the Shine Abyss knowledge, but not the Anbu. Taijutsu is a very complicated art and it can't be limited to the knowledge of one man. The details and the instructions he found were comprehensive. Naito felt that the next time he will go out for training, his growth speed will go up from 1% to 2% just by reading that. These are some important details. Finally, in the 3rd section, the Genjutsu section, Naito didn't have to see it, so he just looked at it while he was leaving the place. Scrolls are not allowed to be out of this room. However, you can copy it. Naito copied the Shadow Clone Technique scroll and the details he wanted, then he left the Anbu department. Back on the ground of Konoha, Naito immediately took off his mask and uniform. Phew. This is really depressing. Slightly breathing, Naito couldn't help but sigh. The atmosphere in the Anbu department was killing him. Almost everyone in there was reticent. Konoha on the ground and underground almost feels like they are not the same place. On the ground, it's full of sunshine and harmonious atmosphere, it's noisy but also it's full of life. But underground, it's so silent and depressing. However, Naito was admiring the Anbu. He admired them even more than the Hokage himself. Hiding for years in the darkness, silently performing various missions in order to protect Konoha. It's because they are living in the darkness, the people in Konoha could live in the light for this long time. Where there's light, there will be darkness. Light and darkness oppose each other, yet they are interdependent. He took a deep breath to clear his mind, then he clenched his fist. He didn't care if he was the light or the darkness. He just wanted to do his best. Naito was living for a simple goal in front of him. He needed to achieve that in order to have more. Next, I will need to concentrate on my training before the upcoming Second Shinobi World War. I need to get stronger if I want to survive. In the morning, the sun rose over the horizon, wiping all the darkness and bringing light to Konoha. Naito was standing at the bottom of a huge wall of rock. He didn't rush right away to the training. Naito stretched his body first, then he immediately started waving his fist against the wall. Boom! Boom! The shocks were spreading out in all directions, but Naito continued on punching while his whole body, his flesh, even his blood were releasing shocks. With every inch of his muscles, of his skin, releasing these shocks, he started becoming more powerful, more perfect. Naito didn't stop it start to train and his body got wet. After a short break, he took out the scroll that Tsunade gave him, then he started to study it carefully. Brutal force is actually a way of using chakra. It requires high chakra control skills. Chakra in the Shinobi world is very similar to ki, it's the core power. It can be turned into elements such as wind, thunder, fire, water, earth, but also it can be used to enhance the power. Brutal force is a way of using chakra to make a momentary increase in power. It can also be described as an instant blast of chakra. The better the chakra's control, the stronger the power. Also, the stronger the chakra nature and quality, the power will become stronger. After studying the scroll carefully, Naito understood the concept of the brutal force. Regarding the point about the quality of the chakra, Naito now has a big amount of chakra. It's at the level of a Chunin, so basically, he's qualified to practice the brutal force. Naito's pathway chakra system is composed only of 2 tenketsu, which are the 2 first gates of the reverse Hakemon Tonku. That's why it's really difficult to make a great enhancement. However, after opening all the gates, Naito will gain a great amount of chakra. So he wasn't worried about that. In this case, the most important thing he needed to learn is controlling his chakra. Should I give it a try immediately? Naito whispered that, thinking about a genius after all. According to the instructions in the scroll, Naito clenched his fist, then he started to mobilize the chakra in his body without using the power of shock. The chakra quickly started to move from his heart and lower body, then it gathered at his fist. Naito with all his power punched the wall. Silent. Then, nothing happened. Of course it won't be this simple. Naito twitched his mouth while he was looking at the small crack he put on the wall. Even that crack was due to his power of shock. If you don't control the chakra you gathered in your fist, it will spread out before the moment of the impact. If it spread out before the impact, it won't do damage. Phew. He exhaled. Naito knew he wouldn't succeed on the first try, but he felt a little bit down. Practicing brutal force requires high skills in controlling chakra. And luckily Naito knew a lot of ways to practice chakra control. Climbing trees, walking on the water, these are some ways to practice your control. If you follow these practices all step by step, you will get better. This time, since being so ambitious didn't work so well for him the first time, he started with the very first step, climbing trees. He may have an amount of chakra comparable to a Chunin, but Naruto and Sasuke at that time had a stronger chakra. Although Naito didn't succeed in mastering the brutal force from the first try, this doesn't mean that his chakra control is weak. On the contrary, the moment Naito's body starts to create chakra, he managed to practice 3 basic ninjutsu right away. In fact, Naito got a great talent for controlling chakra. In less than half a day, Naito completed the first step. He could easily stand upside down on the trunk of a tree. After a short break, Naito didn't want to hurry and started practicing walking on water, so he began his physical training again. Work hard and rest well. Mastering chakra control is very important, but he couldn't let his body go rusty. For Naito, Taijutsu will always come first. OM. OM. It was the sound of the shocks that was coming from Naito's fists smashing the wall in front of him. Even though this training was meant for mastering the power of the shock and to make it even strong, but it was also making his body even stronger. Once again, his whole body was sweating. Naito stopped for a short break. At the same time, he took out the lunch that Kushina made for him. Next I will start the walking on water training. Wait for a second, I think I forgot something. While he was eating his lunch, suddenly a thought came to his mind. Inadvertently, he touched his pocket. There were 2 scrolls. The first one is the brutal force technique. The other is the shadow clone technique. Yes. He almost forgot it. In addition to the brutal force, he still needs to practice the shadow clone technique. This technique is not only useful in fighting, but also in all aspects. Everything the clone learns will be transferred back to the main body when it disappears. Naruto had a poor talent at the beginning of the story. The reason that he was able to catch up with all those geniuses wasn't only that he had the Kyuubi in him, but also was due to this technique. After the clone disappears, it will transfer everything he experienced to the main body. It's almost like cheating. After eating his lunch, Naito stood up, opened the scroll, and started to read it. This is much simpler than the brutal force technique. After he practiced climbing trees, his chakra control improved a lot, which will help him a lot in practicing the shadow clone technique. Shadow clone. Puchi. A cloud of white smoke appeared. A shadow started to appear from the smoke, but the next moment it disappeared. Failed. However, Naito was calm and continued his training. One more. Shadow clone. Pushy. But there was nothing but a white smoke. 2 in a row, but Naito didn't give up. He was certain he will succeed eventually. Although Shadow Clone is a B-class ninjutsu, the practical difficulty is not high. The problem was that Naruto, who was extremely bad at making a simple clone, learned the Shadow Clone very fast. Could Naito's talent be much worse than Naruto? One more time. Shadow Clone. Pushy. A figure that looked exactly like Naito appeared next to him. Done. A smile finally appeared on his face. In fact, Naito has been always curious, will the Shadow Clone have the power of the shocks? So he tried it directly. Naito's Shadow Clone clenched his fist and threw a punch. However, due to the deflection of the shocks on his body, the Shadow Clone disappeared. It can't hurt. This result was already expected, so Naito didn't get disappointed. After all, this power, the Gura Gura no Mi, is not an power from this world. Moreover, it looked like the clone couldn't even handle the power of the shocks. His body is strong enough to resist the deflected shocks, but the clone isn't. Well, this is changes nothing. The main reason for learning it is to helps my practice. Silently consoling himself, Naito again created 2 clones. He wasn't embarrassed that this was his limit. Naruto was a special case. He sent the 2 clones to practice walking on water and Naito continued his workout. With having clones by him, it's really easier to do more in less time. It didn't take long before the clones made it and stepped on the water, then they disappeared, transferring all the experiences they gained to him. Naito again created 2 clones. And kept on doing that. Until they mastered walking on water. At that moment Naito stopped his bodybuilding exercises and officially he began his brutal force training. This time, it will be much easier. After he improved his chakra control, once again Naito gathered chakra in his fist. However, Naito found out that perfect control isn't enough, the details of the process are even more important. If he was an Uzumaki or Senju, dealing with these details would have been very easy on him. But unfortunately, he can't have that. He tried a little by little. It's impossible to use the shadow clone on practicing the power of shocks, but it can be used on brutal force training. Naito created new 2 clones, they together start practicing the brutal force technique. However, it also costs chakra. Fortunately, Naito's chakra's ability to recover is much stronger than ordinary people's. Although it's not as good as Naruto's, he's a user of the 8 gates, after all, his recovery is pretty much good. This is the real advantage of the 8 gates. These small details can bring you high or smash you down. After getting used to it, he made the clones practicing the brutal force, while he started again doing his physical training. His training speed is almost like flying. A month later, at the bottom of the huge wall of rocks, Naito was standing there quietly, his eyes were flashing, suddenly he screamed. OM! Chakra was flowing around Naito's fist. At the same time, Naito's fist was covered with a white halo. Suddenly he threw a punch. Boom! In a flash, the wall in front of him looked like it was hit by a clap of thunder. The crack started to spread out like a spider web. What was more frightening was that the wall didn't break, but it was trembling like it had emotions, like it was afraid. Naito thought that it's gonna blast at any moment. But the wall continued on trembling until a big area of the wall turned into a powder. Wow! Eventually, the large wall collapsed and broke into pieces. The effect is completely different than simply using the power of the shocks. The brutal force technique and the power of the Gura Gura no Mi really complete each other. Looking at the effect of his punch, Naito felt very happy. His fist did enormous damage, adding the power of the brutal force did much more damage than simply just using the earthquake release. Like Naito already expected, combining the power of the shocks to the brutal force in an attack can even shatter a high-level B-class ninjutsu. It can be said that there's no ninjutsu below level A that can't be completely wiped out by Naito. And because the brutal force is a way of using chakra, it also does some effect on the shocks of Naito. When the brutal force is combined with the power of shocks, it changes it, and gathers it in one point, which makes it more powerful at the moment of the impact. So even if Naito uses a big amount of the Gura Gura no Mi, he won't hurt himself by the reflected shocks due to the brutal force control. But this great power has some side effects too. It costs a lot for chakra. The power of the shocks almost doesn't cost any chakra. But the brutal force is different. The brutal force is a way of using chakra, and because he uses it always with the power of the shocks, the consumption of the chakra is multiplied. Therefore, if he uses this technique during a battle continuously, Naito's physical strength and chakra will be completely drained. Of course, it wouldn't be a problem if he uses it 4 or 5 times in a battle. And he still got the reverse Hakimon Tonku, which is very strong. Moreover, he can always use brutal force and the power of shocks severally. Combining these 2 techniques. Although it's not as strong as an ultimate move, it's my strongest attack for now. Naito looked at his fist and snored. He needed to pick up a name for his new ninjutsu. At this time, he couldn't think of any name but one. This move is called Earthquake Release, Brutal Force. What? I didn't expect it, even if it was me, to actually mastering it in only 1 month, is just amazing. Naito smiled. This new ninjutsu will also get stronger in the future. Each gate he opens will increase his chakra amount and enhance the power of this ninjutsu. And once the power of the brutal force becomes stronger, the power of its combination and the shocks will also get stronger. It's a mutual enhancing. And it's based on the power of the reverse Hakimon Tonku. There is no doubt now, for Naito, reverse Hakimon Tonku has completely become his fundamental strength. The enhancing of the shocks is based on it. The brutal force is also based on it. Naito felt that was a good thing. He doesn't care if his direction of development is based on it, at least as long as the reverse Hakimon Tonku is here, his growth path is extremely clear. Choosing the growth path is a very important issue. As an example, Hatake Kakashi graduated from school at the age of 5 years old, then he became a chunin at the age of 6 years old, by the age of 12 years old he became a jonin. However, once he became a jonin he didn't get any better until the original story began. It was due to the death of Rin that left him lost and also because of his Sharingan. Having a small amount of chakra, and 1,000 of ninjutsu will only lead to chaos. It's a waste to have a knife that doesn't cut. If he chose the same path his father did, he would have become a very powerful shinobi. The current path Naito chose is based on the reverse Hakimon Tonku and the earthquake release which is his bloodline. Wipe out every ninjutsu with 1 punch, that's his path. Naito believes that as long as he's walking on this road he will not lose to anyone. And now he has the combination between the shocks and the brutal force. He didn't stop the training but he needed to rest. Work hard and rest well. So he took a break and walked with the river trying to clean his head. After that he took a place, he sat and started eating his lunch. Suddenly someone approached Naito. Naito looked at him as he was reaching him silently. Kushina, how did you find this place? Of course by following you secretly. Kushina waved to him while she was smiling. A box of lunch was in her little hand. I was afraid that you're not eating well, so I came here with another box. Oh, thank you. Looking at her, Naito smiled a little, but suddenly there was a flickering of light in her eyes. Kushina smiled and walked toward him. The moment she reached him, she took out a sword and put it in Naito's chest. Suddenly Kushina's figure starts to change into a guy wearing a mask. Mission completed. I must withdraw quickly before the Anbu figures out what happened. The assassin shook his head when he looked at Naito's body covered in blood, a trace of disdain appeared in his eyes. In order to kill him, he went through a lot of troubles, he spent a lot of time tracking him and since they are in Konoha he needed to wait for the right moment, it was really troublesome. But now he's dead. Ha! He took back the sword then turned to leave. But at that moment, Naito's body disappeared into a cloud of white smoke. What? The assassin's expression instantly changed. It was a clone. When the assassin got covered in his sweat, he felt the danger, a sense of terror controlled him. However, he needed to be ready for any kind of attack so he took a defensive stance. But didn't work so well for him. From the sky. Earthquake release, Kuzua. Without no mercy Naito replied. Being left-handed is what he sold him out. Just now if he didn't realize that there was something wrong with Kushina, there's a high chance that he would be killed by that guy. What's wrong with Konoha? Even an assassin can sneak into the village now. Boom. Without any mercy Naito attacked him. The cracks on the ground start to spread out in all directions. Oh! Momo Satsuki dodged the attack and tried to run from Naito's range attack, but the moment he stood up, his mouth was driveling blood. Obviously, there's no chance for him to dodge Naito's attack without being injured. So what sold me out? Satsuki spat blood, while he looked curious at Naito. Aura. Naito looked at him calmly. Even if you looked exactly like her, you won't fool me, she's the most important person in my life, the atmosphere won't be the same. That's it. He took a deep breath. Satsuki looked very annoyed. He thought if he looked like Kushina he will approach Naito without any problem, but Naito will never mistake Kushina for anyone. Satsuki didn't move, and Naito also didn't move, they kept looking at each other. Naito didn't mind wasting time. They were in Konoha, backup will come in no time. Once an outsider is exposed, Konoha's response will be so fast. It won't be a surprise if the Anbu are already in the way. Which it was very strange to Naito, how did the assassin find such a chance to kill him without being noticed? The Second Shinobi World War is very near, in fact, it might be that there's a lot of spies in Konoha, as Konoha has a lot of spies in other villages. But there's a difference between spies and assassins. Spies usually do not perform assassinations missions, they are simply spying to deliver important information. Once you're in, it will be really difficult to get exposed. On the other hand, assassins who specialize in assassination missions are really easy to get exposed. The difference between the two is the fact that spies are always hiding in the society using that cover to collect information. Even if they do not get any important pieces of information, they will always make sure to not expose themselves. Assassins, on the other hand, will always be close to the targets collecting information about them, waiting for the right moment to do the job. That's why it's really easy to expose them. In particular, a large village like Konoha, it can get mixed with a bunch of spies without being noticed. But it should not be mixed with assassins. It's not a secret now that Konoha is really in a trouble, and it's not only because of this accident, but there's also a lot of other problems within Konoha. The Root, the Uchiha. There's a lot of other names too. The look on his face become colder. But this is not important now. The most important thing is the assassin in front of him, who will live and who will die. Satsuki's first attack ended with a fierce counter-attack from Naito. Only a few moments have passed. Satsuki was staring at him. If he succeeded in the instant assassination, he would quickly retreat. Even if he got hunted by Konoha's ninja, he was confident that he could get rid of them. But now, if you dare to do a big move in Konoha, you will definitely be discovered by the perceptive ninja inside the village, which specializes in patrolling all of Konoha. There's no doubt that he got exposed now. The Anbu may have already surrounded this place. In this case, I will need to move quickly. First I will kill this little monster, then I will calculate my chances of escape. Satsuki glared at Naito. In fact, he knew that he's already too late, he won't leave this place alive, even if he killed Naito. In the next moment, he held his sword with both hands. The white sword suddenly got covered by a blue aura. It seemed to be chakra with the nature of the wind, but it seemed a little bit different. Funeral dance. Whoosh. Satsuki chakra took the image of a ghost. He started to approach Naito while he was doing a very fast barrage of stabs, but it wasn't due to his speed, it was the sword itself. A special sword. Is he one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist? Naito's eyes widened the moment he thought about this, but this sword, it's not one of the 7 swords. Moreover, if he was one of the 7, Naito should have been dead by now. Although this attack is fast, Naito can still reflect it. Go to hell. You little bastard. Satsuki revealed a crazy killing intent. His chakra got all crazy and got burst out. The stabs from the sword got covered by a blue aura. Ha 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 ha. In a flash, the stabs looked like a blossoming lotus. Beautiful but also dangerous. However, in the face of this tactical slaying technique, Naito froze for a moment, but he didn't retreat. This technique just showed how much he was scary. Naito thought it was silly how he considered for a moment that Satsuki was one of the 7. So this is his level. Satsuki's technique wasn't as strong as Naito imagined. Naito was too cautious. He wouldn't be alive if they thought that he was a threat. As a matter of fact, the 7 are very strong shinobi, well known in every village. They couldn't cross the Konoha's borders without being noticed. Even after the assassination succeeded, it won't be easy to safely withdraw without suffering casualties from both sides. If the mission is very dangerous, if it's gonna be life in exchange for life, even if the target is a genius, it won't worth it. The person in front of Naito is at best an elite Chunin. Although this move may seem very dangerous, hell, it's not at the same level as a high-level B-class ninjutsu. For how much more are you gonna hide behind that technique? Naito shook his head, then he clenched his fist. He started to mobilize his chakra and the power of the shock at the same time. Then, all of a sudden, Naito dashed at him and fired a punch at him. Seeing how Naito was trying to stop his sword barehanded, Satsuki felt awkward. Then he smirked. In order to assassinate Naito, he naturally knew about his ability to conjure strange shocks from his fist. However, this technique is his pride. Funeral dance. With this trick, he had assassinated a jonin. This arrogant little brat thinks he can stop this technique barehanded. It's not that simple, even a jonin couldn't stop it. There was even a ridicule look on Satsuki's face, and it seemed like he already imagined the outcome of this clash. But the next moment, his expression was wiped out from his face. It wasn't only Satsuki's expression that got wiped out, but also his funeral dance. It was like a storm, it had enough power to crush anyone. It seemed like everything was ended at that moment. He froze in place. The reason behind that was the fist that crushed his fantasy. His technique was 1 inch from Naito. But it stopped there, right in front of a broken mirror floating in the air. The cracks of that mirror spread out like a spider web. But it wasn't a mirror, it was the air. Space itself got shattered. Catcher. It was like the sound of cracked ice. It broke the silence, and shattered Satsuki's expression. Satsuki finally reacted. Crap. In the face of this stunning jutsu, Satsuki couldn't help but go all out, so he pushed all of his chakra into his technique. The two forces harshly crushed and strangled each other. But Satsuki's sword was always getting stopped 1 inch before Naito's fist. It won't go any further. In the next moment, Naito's shock broke out and overwhelmed everything. Satsuki's sword started to show strange and terrifying distortions. His technique funeral dance, even if it was strong enough to kill Naito, it can't do anything if it doesn't reach him. The power is good, it's almost at the level of an A-class ninjutsu. The range of the attack is also good. At best it's a high-level B-class ninjutsu. But that wasn't enough to overwhelm Naito's fist. Catcher. Finally, the funeral dance got smashed by Naito and got crushed. Even his sword couldn't withstand the power of the impact, and suddenly it broke under the power of the shock. bang! The enormous shock reached Satsuki. Even when he wanted to retreat at the last moment, he couldn't avoid the impact of the shock. This shock wasn't a simple one. This shock was enhanced with the brutal force power. In fact, the funeral dance weakened it, but it didn't stop it. Poof! The moment Satsuki got hit by Naito's technique, the impact sent him flying in the air. He crashed harshly on the ground and spat out blood from his mouth. This time it wasn't light damage. Satsuki doesn't have good physical power, because of the nature of his missions. His body strength is worse than an average shinobi. The first time he barely managed to avoid fatal damage, however, he got injured. This time it's a clean hit. Although he isn't dead yet, he lost the ability to fight. His mouth was overflowed with blood. He stood up while clenching his teeth, trying to resist the pain. He wanted to escape, so he started to run. But Naito won't give him that chance. Even if he let him go, there's no chance for him to escape from the Anbu. But this guy tried to kill him. For those people who want to kill him, Naito will definitely not have mercy on them. Whoosh! In a blink of an eye, Naito caught up to Satsuki. He wanted to catch him, so he didn't use the shock power. Instead he just kicked him fiercely. Konoha Senpua. Boom! Due to Satsuki's injuries, he couldn't dodge it and got kicked directly by Naito. Crack! For a moment, Satsuki heard his own bones breaking one by one, then he once again crashed on the ground. He fell at distance, then he vomited blood again. Satsuki wasn't dead yet, he was struggling to raise his head but couldn't do it. He gritted his teeth with a hint of disbelief in his eyes. He didn't expect Naito to be this strong. Strong enough to stop the funeral dance with one hit. One mistake, just one mistake. Satsuki's heart was full of hatred, not for Naito himself, but to the person who gave him the information about the mission. He wanted to grip his neck and ask him if he was stupid to give such wrong information. It's simply outrageous. In the information he received, there were no records nor information about the fight he had with Samue because it was kept hidden by Konoha and the Uchiha. But the information he had said that Naito was a genius, but he still didn't grow up, and he's under the level of a Chunin. Satsuki wanted to kill the guy who gave him this information just because of the words under the level of a Chunin. Naito looked calmly at Satsuki. He didn't want to kill him. It was better if he kept him alive so that Konoha can question him. However, that didn't go as he expected. Satsuki knew that he must die. With a slight movement of his tongue, he dropped a poisonous pill in his mouth and died. In the end, getting caught is worse than death. Seeing this scene, Naito felt strange. The world of Shinobi is really a cruel one. Whoosh! In the next moment, several ninjas from the Anbu finally appeared. A few of them came to Naito. After they noticed the dead body of Momo Satsuki, some of them got really surprised. He's dead. He looks like a ninja from the Mist Village, but it doesn't rule out the possibility of being from another village. Bring the corpse back for a detailed investigation. In the process, a lot of them didn't speak to Naito, but they couldn't hide their surprise. An assassin sneaked into the leaves and succeeded to find his target and attack him. This is already an incredible thing. It is insane that Naito didn't get killed by that assassin, but also he managed to fight back and kill him. And the most shocking thing is that Naito seems to have no injuries. So this is what a genius looks like. They were looking at him asking themselves if they were his age and they faced the same circumstances, will they survive this assassination? Definitely no. Not to mention surviving without even being injured. They kept looking at each other until one of them talked. "You Naito, you come with us to the department to report the details of this accident." "Okay." Naito nodded while he was thinking. "Danza, the Uchiha, there's no doubt that one of them helped the assassin to enter the village and to successfully get the chance to eliminate him. But he can't be sure." Naito took a deep breath. He needs to be more cautious. This world is crueler and darker than what he imagined. The Hokage office. Sarutobi was looking at a document in front of him. "This is a special Anbu squad. After taking Satsuki's corpse, they extracted some memories from his brain and some messages. The targets were Naito and Kushina. This is a problem." Sarutobi had a sharp look on his face. Although the incident of Naito killing Uchiha Samue was hidden from the public, he has been given the nickname Genius of the school, and maybe they saw that this was worth the assassination. But Kushina also, it's strange. The special Anbu squad found out a lot of information about Satsuki. And they found out that Satsuki's target wasn't only Naito. Uzumaki Kushina was the second target. Could it be that other villagers guessed the identity of Kushina? "It is possible," the man next to him said. The person who was standing next to Sarutobi was Sakumo Hatake. "Then we might already rush our plans, without mentioning that Mito Osama's body won't last any longer. Uzumaki Mito is the wife of the first Hokage and also the first Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi." "Okay." Sakumo nodded gently. Uzumaki Kushina was the next Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Only a few people knew about this. And they cannot be sure that there will not be another assassin after her. He kept quiet for a moment, then Sarutobi said, "How's Naito?" "He's fine." Sakumo gently smiled and said, "This child is not just an excellent ninja with a great talent, but also you should know HolyOniiSama, that he got an extraordinary mind." "Yeah." Sarutobi nodded, then he suddenly continued, "Are you gonna make him an official member of the Anbu?" "Well, let me review the situation again." Hatake Sakumo slightly hesitated, then he said, "Although this incident of assassination that he dealt with was a very difficult situation and the outcome was very beautiful, but we cannot be sure if he reached the standards of an Anbu." "Yeah." The Anbu department. Naito went to the Anbu department to report everything that happened, how he approached him, the techniques he used. After that, Naito left the tactical room. After all, he's one of the Anbu. They just needed him to fill the blanks. After leaving the tactical room, Naito wanted to leave the department, but he suddenly received a convening order. He was a little bit surprised. Naito immediately thought that should be regular training for the Anbu members. Regular training is mandatory and it cannot be rejected. After he received the call, Naito walked toward the meeting place. Alternate members are different from the officials. Because the alternate members do not perform too many tasks, they will have a specific training session on a regular basis. Meeting place, in a special hall. When he arrived, Naito noticed that there were too many ninjas with masks gathered there. Basically, they were all alternate members. In other words, the alternate members of both the Anbu and the Root got called to have a training session. In fact, the training of the Anbu alternate members was the same training of the Root alternate members. Danza was forbidden to train them himself. After all, Sarutobi didn't trust him enough. So the Roots and the Anbu are nominally together but actually are completely separated. Training of the alternate members is still performed inside the walls of the Anbu department and has nothing to do with the Root. When Naito walked into the crowd, he attached a lot of eyes. Although he was wearing a mask and cloak, everyone could guess his age. Just by looking at his appearance, you can guess right away that he is a teenager. Can such a small kid become an Anbu candidate? Some ninja couldn't hide their surprise. He might be just an alternate member, but this is not an ordinary thing too. But those privileges of having unlimited resources, free equipment, won't last long if they stopped being here. The Anbu training is, on one hand, a training, and on the other hand, is a way of elimination. Eliminate the people who are not improving and who are no longer qualified to become an official member of the Anbu, and also recording the improvement of the excellent ninjas. An excellent ninja is, of course, a qualified one. As for those who have been eliminated, they will no longer enjoy the privileges of the Anbu, they will return to being regular shinobi. Some of the candidates felt when they saw Naito, that the Anbu got too picky. This is a place for the special and the most talented ninjas. I am afraid that he won't even complete the first round, he will just get eliminated directly. That's what everyone thought. After that, they were no longer concerned about Naito. After a while, a ninja came in with a cloak of a different color. In a flicker, he appeared in front of them. He wasn't the Dark Captain, but he was one of the 3 division captains in the Anbu department. He's one of the top levels in Konoha. This time, the 3 persons who achieve the lowest score will be eliminated from the Anbu, hoping everyone will take this seriously. The first round of the training will be in the Valley of the End, follow me. The captain's face was hidden under the mask, but he sounded very calm and husky. After that, he turned directly and left the hall. Everyone followed him. Naito as well followed him. Valley of the End. A familiar place. His eyes were flashing under his mask. The place he chose gave the test another meaning to Naito due to the important events that happened in that place. Naito got surprised while he was following the captain. They continued on advancing under the ground. Unexpectedly, there is direct access to the Valley of the End under the grounds of Konoha. However, the idea is reasonable. Naito didn't know how far they were under the ground, but he felt like they were almost under the forest. It was extremely narrow in there, with only one channel. Everyone did the same when the captain stopped. Then they went up with the captain. They went up directly in the middle of the Valley of the End. After everyone reached the place, the captain with calm eyes he looked at the candidates and began to explain the first round of the training. We've hidden a lot of trails in the valley. Along these trails, you can always go looking for the special task items, which are these scrolls in my hand. Then, the captain took out a yellow scroll and shook it for a little bit. There are many scrolls hidden in the valley, however, finding them won't be easy. You will need to be patient, also a good judgment in following the traces. The moment you get a scroll, go back here to the tower and give it to me. Get 1 and you will have 10 points, get 2 and you will have 20, and so on. I want to remind everyone that candidates can fight each other for the scrolls, so while you need to be careful while looking for the traces. This is the first round of the training. Killing is extremely forbidden, this is the only rule. Of course, fighting can lead to accidents, but as long as it's not dead, there will not be a problem. This training will be monitored all the way long. The captain was explaining the first round of the training with a calm tone. If everything is clear, I declare the start of the first round of the training now. Everyone was listening carefully to the captain's instructions. Then they looked at each other and they all walked out from the tower to the valley. Whoosh! And at the same time, every single one of them starts to run in every direction looking for the traces. This is really worthy of the Anbu department, it's even harder than the Chunin exam in the original story. Naito also did the same, then he climbed the highest tree in the place and looked around. Every official member of the Anbu is an elite ninja. This training alone will test our ability to search, fight, escape and also track and determine almost all the basic needed abilities in every Anbu. All these abilities are needed for tracking the trace and then searching and delivering the scrolls to the forest again. Suddenly an idea came Naito. No. These processes, the whole point of this training is not to test the all-round ability of an Anbu. The real purpose is to find the best specialists from all those people. It's impossible to be a perfect ninja to be excellent in everything, and that's what the training asking us to be. The difficulty is extremely high. Ninjas who are good at searching for information and tracking targets may find it easy to get a large number of scrolls, but they will not be able to hold to them for long. Those who have a great ability to escape will be able to deliver the scrolls, but they will need to wait for an opportunity to get it. As for the ninja with strong fighting ability, he will not be able to find a scroll, but taking someone else's scroll will be the answer. The real purpose of this training is to determine the best side of each candidate in order to train him for his role as a scout ninja or a combat ninja. So this was he meant by monitoring. After he thought about that, a smile raised on Nashio's face. Now that he understands the real purpose of the training, he will not look for a scroll. There's no one at the same level as a Jonin among all these candidates. The only person with a high rank in here is the captain himself. In other words, for Naito, there's no one can stand against him. In the valley, some ninjas already found the scrolls. And at that moment the real training has started. Everyone started to fight for those scrolls. The purpose of this training is not teamwork, but individual strength. However, under the eyes of the captain and rule of not causing any deaths, there were only injuries and not death. Soon someone came to deliver his scroll. And of that moment, Naito was standing quietly outside in front of the tower. He didn't enter the valley at all. Yes. Since the destination is the tower, it's okay to stand directly in front of the place. There's no need to go to the valley. Of course, there's a little problem with this way, because nobody knows who's the strongest one among the candidates. It's very likely that you will get surrounded by a lot of opponents. That is why everyone expects Naito to think about that and didn't choose to do it. Hey! The candidate who was carrying the scroll rushed forward the moment he saw Naito. He couldn't see his face, but judge from his appearance he knew that Naito was a kid. He thought that Naito didn't dare to go to the valley, so he decided to give up on this round from the very beginning. The candidate shook his head. However, he still needed to be careful, so cast a wind release B-class ninjutsu while he was rushing forward. He thought that this ninjutsu will crush Naito, and he will just pass. It was a good idea. However, the reality is not that simple. Boom! The air got cracked. The B-class ninjutsu got completely shattered by Naito's fist. It's you. The candidate watched his B-class ninjutsu smashed with just a punch from Naito. This ability is very familiar, even if he didn't see it with his own eyes, he has heard a lot of story about it. Isn't this the ability of the most talented kid in the ninja school, the famous Naito? Then there is no doubt about it, the person in front of him is Naito. The moment he thought about that, his face revealed an unbelievable expression. It's not because Naito becomes an alternate member of the Anbu, but because he just blows out a B-class ninjutsu. Is this a joke? He just became the most talented kid in the ninja school. How did he grow up to this level? The result of the life and death duel between Naito and Samue was hidden by the higher-ups, so no one knew the true strength of Naito. Even a lot of the Anbu doesn't know anything about it. Not to mention the alternate ninja in front of him. He only knew that Naito became very famous after he won against Minato at the final and become the most talented kid in the ninja school. Therefore, after he recognized that this kid was Naito and saw what he did to his B-class ninjutsu, he felt that this was unbelievable. However, he saw that with his own eyes. "Give me the scroll." Naito looked calmly at him. Damn. The candidate felt the coldness in Naito's eyes. Even if Naito's strength is a little bit beyond what he imagined, he will not just give him the scroll that he fought hard for it. He quickly printed seals. Boom. Nashio was so fast to the point that his figure looked like a ghost. He quickly dashed toward him and punched him. But he managed to complete the seals at the last second. Pucci. Under the effect of the shock, the ninja's body directly turned into smoke and disappeared. In the next moment, from the left side of Naito, the ninja reappeared again. He used a shadow clone. He was far away from his shadow, but they were printing at the same time. Water release. Dragon bomb technique. Thunder release. Dragon bomb technique. A terrifying stream of water took the shape of the dragon, rushed towards Naito. And what's more terrifying is that the Thunder Dragon and the Water Dragon united into a new one. It looked like it was almost unstoppable. The ninja fell back immediately after he released his ninjutsu, and he revealed a sneer from his eyes. "You can stop ordinary B-class ninjutsu. But, can you stop this one? A combined ninjutsu." When he saw this ninjutsu, Naito stopped for a moment. Combining two B-class ninjutsu can enhance the power to be equal to high-level B-class ninjutsu. And this guy in front of him has the same elements as Minato. Sure enough, this ninja is really unusual even if he's just an alternate. But, whoever is in front of him, it will be always the same answer. No matter how bigger or smaller. All he will need is boom. Because at this level the only thing that looked different for Naito is the size. The chakra and the white halo appeared around Naito's fist. And suddenly he burst it out. Earthquake release. Brutal force. Catcher. The power of the shock exploded in the air and broke it like a mirror. Under the enhancing of the brutal force technique, the power of the shock is more concentrated. In the next moment, the combined ninjutsu suddenly got stagnated in the air. The dragon got frozen. The sound of the light and water getting vibrated by the shocks was really strange. The entire area seemed like it's gonna collapse. The moment Naito withdrew his fist back, everything in front of him disappeared. The combined B-class ninjutsu was completely shattered under Naito's fist. This is impossible. The candidate could no longer remain calm. He was looking at Naito's eyes with fear. It looked like he was seeing a monster. What a joke. His first ninjutsu got blocked, but he felt that this won't be a problem, but now even his ultimate ninjutsu got easily smashed with one punch. How strong is he? Give me the scroll. Naito looked calmly at the ninja and walked toward him step by step. Take it. The ninja had sweat on his forehead, his eyes were full of fear. He put his hand in his pocket and pulled out the scroll, then he threw it toward Naito. Naito decided to leave without harming him, so he turned around the moment he got the scroll. Looking at his back, the ninja was clenching his teeth. He wanted to attack him, but he was so scared that he couldn't even move. The first scroll, so if I got more scrolls, will I get an exemption from the next rounds of the training? Naito murmured that. Since he decided to stay in front of the tower, it won't be simple. But for him it was an easy matter. Tigers will always eat the pigs, this is a rule in this world. Like Minato, he needed to be the best at everything. After he learned the Flying Thunder God technique, he reached another level. No one could even stand against him. Countless battlefields got crashed by him only. Madara also chose to follow what he believed, so he hid for so long, and that was part of his plan, but he eventually failed. He ended being a rat for so long, but when he came out, he completely controlled the battlefield of the Fourth Shinobi World War and was gonna do more. Didn't he fear the end? Uchiha Madara, do you fear the end? No. He will say that with confidence, and he will ask everyone to kneel under his feet. Therefore, he fought until the last moment and made the fear sneak into every heart in that battlefield. Naito, on the other hand, has the power to wipe out all the candidates. If this is really the truth, then he will just wipe them out. If you're afraid to show your strength, you will never be like them, you won't be Minato nor Madara. Moreover, the more he shines, the more the odds will be on Naito's side. And it will be more difficult for Danzo and the Uchiha to touch him. After he got the scroll, Naito didn't choose to enter the tower but put the scroll directly on the ground. Then he quietly waited for the next person. Of course, this scene made everyone in the tower shocked. Not entering the forest, and instead he stood in front of the tower waiting for everyone to come. What a confidence! Surely he did good with the first person, but this is not confidence, it's arrogance. Does he think that he will always be able to defeat the next one? The Anbu ninjas, as well the captain, were observing the entire valley. But Naito's behavior caught their eyes. Even the captain paid more attention to him and snored. He's a very frustrating kid, isn't he? No wonder the captain himself asked me to keep an eye on him, he's really frustrating. He could have delivered that scroll, but he chose to stay there and draws more people to block them, but this won't be easy. After he shook his head, the captain continued observing the other battles. In his opinion, Naito can block several ninjas and has a good score, then enter the tower. But also it's possible to be defeated directly by someone who's stronger than him, and have all of his scroll taken. Just shortly afterward, a second ninja came to deliver his scroll. He was rushing out from the valley to the tower with high speed. He seemed like the fast type. It wasn't only his body is the reason behind his speed, even his chakra seemed strange. Whoosh! Just as he was gonna enter the tower, a figure rushed to him with a high speed too. What? The ninja got a little bit surprised, but he was fast too. Even if he was facing the speed of Naito, he managed to react. However, because he didn't know the identity of Naito, he decided to attack him. The ninja threw a punch toward Naito. Naito felt a little bit surprised, but he didn't hesitate to counter his attack. So he threw a punch at him too. Even without the power of the shock and with just using brutal force, Naito had the upper hand. After all, he can't go all out, because he will get suspended. The ninja's hand got all numb after the clash between his grip and Nashio's, so he couldn't grab the scroll any longer, even his fingers were bleeding. The ninja got pushed down. You. Once again Naito overcomes an opponent with just one move. He fell to the ground, then he ran away, leaving his scroll. What the hell? This guy who seems to be less than 10 years old can actually beat him in the terms of physical power and win. Oh, the ninja is falling out. That lucky bastard, he got 2 scrolls. The Anbu in the tower couldn't help but speak. Although they were known for their silence, they couldn't stay without saying any word. He won't come in yet. How arrogant does he think he can take everyone out? At that time Naito took the attention of many Anbu. The third ninja finally arrived. He was very talented with Genjutsu. But it wasn't a surprise, he got defeated by Naito. As long as it's not a very high technique as Kageyama used, it won't have an effect on Naito. The fourth was a ninja who was very good at assassination, very talented at using daggers. He got really close to him, but that speed didn't catch Naito unguarded, so he tried to attack him anyway. Naito simply dodged and wiped him out with one punch. The fifth, the sixth, the seventh. The Anbu was too angry about the behavior of Naito. But with Naito taking out all the candidates one by one, the pile of scrolls started to get bigger, one by one. The Anbu couldn't speak. They were all silent. However, the amazement in their eyes was really clear. The shock on some people was really clear. The captain was staring at the bottom of the tower. "You Naito, we really need to take care of that kid." The captain wasn't wrong. How many did he get? More than 20 scrolls. There is 30 people in the valley, we've hidden 60 scrolls, and there's still 31 remaining. He mumbled that while he couldn't help but widen his eyes. "You Naito, how much further can you go?" He didn't know how many points did he have. He didn't care whether he was qualified or not, he just wanted to see how much can he go. After that, it looked like more than one person start to come. It won't be a one-on-one fight anymore, but it becomes a pair of 2 or even 3 at one time. It won't be simple to have a perfect score in the training camp, to eliminate everyone. Gradually the time passed. Most of the scrolls were founded. Many ninjas who haven't found one know that it was no longer meaningful to stay in the valley. Now they need to rush to the tower as soon as possible. The only solution is to get a scroll there before it gets delivered. Everyone knew that the final round of this training will be at the gate of the tower. One by one they start to reach there. But they all got stunned the moment they returned. They had an unbelievable look on their faces. All because of the young 10-year-old boy standing in front of the gate with a large pile of scrolls next to him. And in the rear a large of wounded candidates lying here and there. This is what happened. All of these scrolls. Alone. Impossible. Whenever someone reaches the place he will have the same expression. With an incredible look, they were all looking at him. He can't be more than 10 years old. Some of them thought the moment they saw him, that he will get eliminated directly. But they didn't think that this kid will be the reason for everyone getting eliminated. Although he knew he got so many scrolls, Naito could no longer count how many people he defeated. However, they are all candidates of the Anbu. Soon they could read the situation. They knew that Naito had already been fighting for a long time. The number of the scrolls doesn't only prove his strength but also that he's already on the edge. No man can fight for this long and keep his strength. And this is their chance. As long as they snatch a scroll they can storm into the tower and deliver it. And there will be a lot of eliminated candidates thanks to Naito. Maybe there will not be the second round. They have a great opportunity to become an official Anbu member directly. To become an official member is, of course, the only target for every candidate. Although it's a very hard job to have, the privileges are really great. Almost every family in Konoha sent one of them to become an Anbu. Let go. He can't stop all of us. Yes. Some people couldn't hold back in front of this shot. They knew they can be able to steal a scroll from Naito. But Naito had the answer in his fists. With the power of the shock combined with the brutal force technique spreading out in every direction, no one could go any further. Even if 3 of the 5 ninjas join hands, they are still all defeated by Naito. The more people that come, the more they fall. In fact, it was a slow-paced battle, but still, it was also spectacular. But the more it continues, the more and more Naito becomes physically consumed, his chakra is almost drained. However, the only thing is keeping him in this fight is the reverse Hakimon Tonku. Especially the first gate was enhancing his body and chakra with new power. It was an endless fight for Naito, but the more his warfare continued, the more he proved his braveness. It was fun. There wasn't any ninja in his age with the same physical strength and endurance, even Guy and Lee wasn't at the same level as him. This long warfare reflected his true power. It was a shock for everyone. By this time Naito was no longer defensive against the attackers. Instead, he began to shoot at sight. Everyone who wasn't on the ground was part of his warfare. Some people wanted to steal a scroll and rush to the tower, but he didn't give them the chance. There were more and more people falling, but Naito won't be one of those. A very shocking scene. Everyone was speechless. It wasn't only the people who are facing Naito on the battlefield, even the Anbu had a shocking look. Naito is blocking everyone with his own power. There wasn't anyone between all the alternate members a worthy opponent for Naito. Even if several of them join hands, they won't defeat him. Moreover, from the beginning of the fight, Naito didn't get damaged by anyone. His whole body was sweating, and that was the only proof of exhaustion. But he wasn't damaged at all. He's a monster. This guy. Scary. Most candidates who were defeated by Naito got injured. Looking at Naito's eyes, there was no anger. But their eyes were full of fear. This is a world where the strongest are respected. This name of these strong people will be the fear of countless people, such as Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama. Naito was unaware of how his style looked like. Well, it was the vibes he gave more than a style. It was different than Orochimaru's demonic vibes or the coldness that Itachi gave. It was more similar to Uchiha Madara. The vibes of the strongest shinobi ever lived. At the end of the fight, there were only a few candidates left, but they couldn't even dare to face Naito. The pressure was too tense, so they just give up. In the end, they handed over their own scrolls without fighting. This was the final outcome. A silent end, but a shocking one too. Naito just wiped out every single one of them. In total, there was 60 scrolls in the valley, 54 were found, and they were all piled up at the feet of Naito. The silence controlled the tower too. Even the captain showed a hint of shock in his eyes. It wasn't only because of the score he got, but also because of the vibes that he felt from Naito at the end. He's one of the 3 Anbu captains and he's a strong man. And he believes that he has the same vibes. The kind of vibes that you own after going through countless battles, rolling between life and death, climbing your way to being the strongest. And only a strong man will own it. Yes, there's no doubt about it, Naito gave the same vibes. Although it was so light, but it does exist. How incredible. The Hokage office. Sarutobi was working on the Anbu's documents and next to him was Hatake Sakumo. At that time, a masked ninja appeared in the office. Because the Anbu had high-class information, he needed to deliver it quickly. HolyOniiSama, Captain. The training is over. Sarutobi and Sakumo looked at each other and asked. Well, how are the casualties? 0 death, 11 were seriously injured and 34 had slight injuries. After hearing these numbers, the two of them looked at each other, then they nodded slightly. It looked a little bit scary how almost all the candidates were injured. But in fact, every time they had training, even if they avoided deaths, they will always have more serious injuries than this. This time it was a small number. Because of these casualties, they don't do training camps regularly. And what about the score? Is it good? Sakumo asked calmly. On the other side, Sarutobi couldn't resist the feeling and said, "How was Naito's performance? It wasn't bad, right?" "Well, even if it's not bad, it's still nothing, he's still young after all." As soon as he heard these words, the Anbu start to act weird under his mask. "Well, Hokage-sama, Captain. I am about to report the final score of the training camp. Only one person passed, all the other candidates had 0 points." This sentence suddenly stunned both Sakumo and Sarutobi. "What did you say?" Almost the two of them said that at the same time with an unbelievable look on their faces. The alternate member Naito stood outside of the tower and defeated all the other candidates and took all of their scrolls. The others scored 0, and Naito had 540. Even if the Anbu are known to be very calm, he couldn't say that without a slight vibration in his voice. Even after all this time, he was still shocked. Even Sarutobi couldn't keep his calm. How can this be? Sakumo was calmer, but his eyes didn't hide his shock. In the end, he smiled after he shook his head and said, "Well, it's you, Naito, we're talking about. This child is always beyond our expectations." Yes. After all, Sarutobi was the Hokage of Konoha. He needed to be calm, but he couldn't hide the surprise in his eyes. This kind of thing has never happened in history. What do you think? Well, I am very curious about the strength of that child. I have to see it for myself. Sakumo nodded gently with a strange glow in his eyes. Sarutobi nodded back. Well, that child is really qualified now, and even I want to see his strength. In the woods of Konoha. Underground. After he eliminated everyone, Naito went back to the base with the others. He took a short break there. Along the way back to the base, the candidates, even the official members of the Anbu, looked at Naito differently. They only saw him before as a genius boy who still didn't grow up. But the growth of Naito was beyond the imagination of everyone. Genius cannot describe Naito now. He's a monster. At that time, no one doubted that Naito will become an official member of the Anbu. It almost became a fact. There were a lot of injuries and they needed to be treated. Naito proved that he's the most talented candidate in the history of the Anbu. Moreover, with this incredible talent, as long as he grows up more, he will even be at the level of the captain. And if he becomes the captain of a division, it will not be impossible to even become the next leader of the Anbu. At that time, Naito was standing quietly in a corner. No one came to disturb him. After the warfare he had, although he didn't get injured, Naito really got physically exhausted. At this battle, the reverse Hakimon Tonku really proved itself useful. Especially the first gate, the Gate of Heart. He even got stronger due to its body feeding. He got really improved physically. Sure enough, fighting is also a way of increasing power, and without getting into bloody battles you won't become a true powerhouse. No fighting experience, no life or death, no improvement. The change was actually a spiritual one, but it's directly linked to strength. Because the spirit will influence the chakra, and the last will have an effect on the body. I didn't expect that this battle will improve me this much. It's almost compared to the time I practiced for a month. Focusing for a while restored Naito's strength. Just as Naito stood up, suddenly someone walked into the hall. It was the leader. He didn't wear a mask. And the 3 captain divisions were following him. The identity of the leader was known to everyone. The leader of the Anbu, Hatake Sakumo. Leader! Leader! In a moment, all the Anbu, whether they were alternate or official members, saluted Sakumo. Sakumo gently nodded. He raised his hand as a sign for everyone that they didn't have to gather, then he walked from the crowd directly in front of Naito. This is the first time Naito and Sakumo meet. Although Sakumo has observed Naito in the dark more than once, this is the first time Naito see him. Although he was very young at this time, Naito directly recognized him. Leader! Naito showed a touch of respectful expression as he gently saluted him. Regardlessly of how a lot of people see it, Naito still has the love and respect for Konoha. In the original book, Naito felt real pity for the White Fang. Just because he saved his companion and gave up the mission, the hero becomes the most hated person in the whole village. Then he finally suicided. Although the first rule of being a ninja is doing your task even if it cost you your life. But in Naito's opinion, these rules don't always apply for a noble purpose. Even if Sakumo focused on his mission and didn't save his companions, there is no proof that the mission will succeed and maybe he will lose from both sides. But there's no doubt that someone played him. Hatake Sakumo was really a very strong shinobi who was qualified to be the 4th Hokage. And without forgetting about how he's the right hand of Sarutobi, which is naturally a pain in a lot of people's asses. Of course, these are only speculations, none of this happened yet, Naito can't be so sure about it. You don't need to be so polite. Sakumo looked at Naito and smiled. His expression was very warm, not a sign of coldness. When you see him it's almost impossible to believe that he's Konoha's White Fang. It was a bit surprising this time, even I couldn't believe it. I was holding back the entire time. Naito shrugged. The captain next to him couldn't help but get a little bit furious. You were holding back. You were holding back and still wiped out all the candidates. Then what will you do if you go all out, reaching the sky? Sakumo couldn't help but reveal a strange expression the moment he heard Naito. He twitched his mouth slightly. However, you've done a great job. The alternate member state is the last threshold for becoming an official member. There is no need to hide anything from you. What I need to see is your talent and your ability to choose your position next in the future. He continued speaking after he patted Naito's shoulders. You had a great performance in this training, but I would like to see more. These words made Naito feel a little bit strange. See more? What do you mean? No, no. Does he want to test my strength by himself? Naito had a dazed expression, he couldn't help but be sad. Sakumo smiled, turned, and said, "Follow me." Looking at the back of Sakumo, Naito didn't help but to think. How strong is the White Fang? Naito was uncertain, but at least he should be as strong as a Hokage. How else can you become so famous in the Shinobi World War II? The Hokage's level is out of Naito's league. Naito got bored. He had a great battle just right now. He doesn't want to get a beating. But this is the will of the leader, he can't refuse it, the only choice he has is to follow. Helplessly he shook his head. However, in his heart, he thought Sakumo shouldn't have a habit of abusing a genius. It's certain that he will test him personally, and this will end with Sakumo giving him some advice. The sparring and the pointing of the strongest Anbu. Looks like this is the reward he got after he had that incredible performance. Following Sakumo, they soon came to open space. Deep underground. Dark and silent, with an abyss-like atmosphere. Naito was so surprised by the marvelous perfection of the Konoha underground buildings. Too big. And the structure is so perfect. Ordinary people cannot do that. However, for a ninja, it shouldn't be so difficult. Along with Sakumo and Naito, there were several captains and ordinary Anbu too. The other had missions. Even if they were looking forward to seeing Sakumo personally training Naito, they couldn't come. Come on, attack me, use your strongest attack. No, use any attack you think can affect me. Sakumo stood in front of Naito while he opening his hands. Naito couldn't resist the thought that none of his attacks will defeat Sakumo. But he won't reject the invitation. Until this day, every enemy who went against Naito got his ass beaten. But Naito doesn't know if he has any chance. Sakumo's strength is far better than his. Anyway, after a little time off sparring, Naito should be able to calculate his strength, and then he will be able to find his strong and weak points. After that he will be able to think of ways to improve himself and become stronger. Whoosh! You can't go easy against someone like the White Fang, you need to go all out from the beginning. Naito dashed toward him with full speed, he rushed directly to the right side of Sakumo and then threw a punch. Boom! Sakumo revealed a slight appreciation for this high speed he saw. There's not a lot of people with the same speed as Naito at the Chunin level. Of course, for him, even if Naito was twice as fast, he could easily react. With a fast reaction, Sakumo easily dodged Naito's attack. Naito didn't stop there, he knew he needed to do more, so once again he rushed towards Sakumo. This moment allowed Sakumo to take his stance again, and then he continued to dodge Naito's attack. He didn't fight back, allowing him to continue his attack. It looked like he was getting a beating by Naito. But in fact, Naito was the one who was feeling helpless. With his current ability he simply cannot do anything against Sakumo. He knew Sakumo was just playing around. Even if couldn't beat him, he simply needed to do his best. Boom! 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 The sound of the trembling field came mainly from Naito, who was shaking the ground more with every punch he threw. The Anbu watched with twinkling eyes, they were amazed by the power of Naito. A lot of these people didn't saw Naito's performance in the valley. Every punch he throws has the same power of a B-class ninjutsu. And it seems like it's not consuming a lot of his power. What a strong bloodline. Several of the division captains seemed okay, they looked very calm, but their feelings were mixed with awe too. And for the other captains, they looked frightened from his power. If they were facing Naito, it looks like it would be a very difficult fight. Naito's ability is too tricky unless you're a shinobi who mastered at least ninjutsu above the A class, it will be impossible to break through his shocks. Strong. Very strong. This was the thoughts of everyone in the room. And the last event of Naito's defeating every candidate proves their thoughts. Naito now is on the top of his game. Some of the Anbu went deep in their thoughts. But the fight continued. Naito's attack were scary, after every punch he throws, the air will burst like a mirror, leaving cracks in the space. However, Sakumo's footsteps were amazing, he was perfectly dodging every attack, and that's made Naito go all out. Naito stops for a moment and took a deep breath, then he once again rushed in front of Sakumo, then suddenly he clenched his fist. His chakra got surged into his fist. Earthquake release. Brutal force technique. Boom. The power of this punch was completely different from the previous ones. Not only that it was stronger, also it felt more condensed, and the power of the attack was more concentrated. Sakumo thought that he already saw everything Nashio had, but he thought wrong. Brutal force technique. As soon as Naito used his chakra, Sakumo felt that something was different, but the moment he saw the technique he recognized it. The surprise was clear on his face. He didn't think that Tsunade has already taught him the brutal force technique and Naito could already learn it in this short time. Sakumo is the leader of the Anbu and he has a natural understanding of the various secret techniques in Konoha, including the brutal force technique. He knew that the difficulty of mastering it was very high. Still, Naito already learned that, and in just a few months. Bang! The power and the range of the attack were wider than they should be, and for that reason, Sakumo couldn't react fast. He got dragged completely by the power of the shock. Not good. When the attack reached his body, the expression of Sakumo changed. He couldn't resist that power. Even if he won't get injured, it would be a little bit embarrassing for him. Facing such a situation, Sakumo didn't get panic, on the contrary, he revealed a hint of appreciation in his eyes. Laugh. Almost no one in the room saw how Sakumo pulled out a kunai in the last moment. At the last moment, Sakumo managed to pull out a kunai, then he used it to counter Naito's attack. It seems he was able to cut the power of the shock into two after he enhanced his kunai with his chakra, that's what they thought. But actually, it was the Hatake kunai's technique. Using an extremely high advanced method of chakra control, he was able to use an invincible kunai to interfere with Naito's punch, then he cut the power with the same kunai into two. No damage, no trembling. Not even a sound. It seemed like he even cut off the sound. No, with one kunai, it seemed like he cut the space between heaven and earth. Brush. A moment of silence. Naito's technique and for the first time got shuttered. This moment got all the Anbu fired up. That's the leader's kunai technique. Did he just used it? This technique always amazes me. Several Anbu were amazed, even Naito got shocked after he saw Sakumo's technique. This is a shocking scene. Is this the true power of Konoha's White Fang? Until this point, Naito shuttered everything with his fist. It's really strange to find himself standing against someone who's able to cut everything. He couldn't help but admit the defeat of his style. But even if he's invincible, he will not give up. If he stopped a punch, he will just throw more. He will do his best. After the brutal force got cut off by Sakumo, Naito didn't stop, he clenched his fist tightly, and once again he threw another punch. Suddenly the air got burst, the power of the shock shrouded the front, then spread out in every direction. The continuous using the brutal force is a great burden on Naito. However, it was eventually used successfully. It looked like Sakumo didn't expect that Naito could throw another big one easily. The second he dealt with the first one, another big one was waiting for him. And for the second time, he found himself in a pinch. Even if he's Konoha's White Fang, he cannot go against the shocks of Naito without having any defense. Without any hesitation, Sakumo took out his sword from his back and cut off the shock before it reaches him. Whoosh! The second one was cut off again by him. But in fact, Naito with his power forced him for the second time to step back and defend against him. This is a little bit staggering. Even the other Anbu noticed that. Hatake Sakumo got knocked back by Naito. Although everyone knew that Sakumo wasn't serious and he only attended to train him, Even if that's the case, Naito was able to force the White Fang to step back not once but twice. This is extremely shocking. Sakumo also got a little bit upset. After he stepped back, he shook his head while he was chuckling. "You kid. Hey, I told you, I was always holding back." Naito smiled. "Nothing of that matter anymore, it was all about seeing how strong you are. We couldn't figure out your limit, but I can see it now." Sakumo nodded softly, then he put back his sword to his back. Then he walked toward Naito with a calm yet serious expression. "You're strong, the path you took is somehow similar to mine. You simply crush everything with the power of your shock, and am cutting off everything with advanced sword technique and chakra control. But your strength has a weakness, it's not flexible enough." Speaking of this, Sakumo started to recall scenes from the spare as he continued his talk. "My sword technique can allow me to have a constant pace of attack. I can be more flexible to change between the attacks and even changing to the defense, but your power seems to stiff at the time of the outbreak, right?" Naito listened carefully to what he said. "Stiff, huh?" "Yes, indeed. He's really at the level of a Hokage. In one word, Naito's shocks and Gai's Shikizo are somehow also similar. The first one does vibrate the air and spread cracks into space, and the second creates a cannon of pressurized air. However, there's also a little difference between the two. There's a difference between the two at the moment of the impact, also the two technique doesn't have the same power. The big difference between the two is that after Naito attack the first time, there will be a brief and rigid state. In this process, he cannot move. He cannot do the same attack guys do, using his high speed to make multiple blows from multiple directions. To put it simply, Naito will need to wait for a short time until the shock force broke out completely to be able to attack again. He can't punch and move to another location immediately. That led Naito to be unable to have a move like Shikizo, using high speed to attack in multiple directions and strangling the enemies in the middle of his attacks. A disadvantage, that's what are you trying to say? Sakumo got stunned a bit, his eyes flashed, then he said, "If your shocks can get stronger then this disadvantage won't be a problem. But at this stage, if the enemy uses any kind of strong ninjutsu to break through, or to stop your shocks, your rigid stat will be very deadly." Naito nodded. The stronger the shock, the more and more his weakness will disappear. If Naito could smash an S-class ninjutsu even if he stiff for a moment, no one will be able to stop him when he attacks again. No one will be able to have an advantage over his rigid state. But at this stage, Naito can only defeat a B-class ninjutsu. And this will lead him to a freezing situation. Shinobi who can't cast an A-class ninjutsu will all get defeated by Naito. Even if they figure out his weakness, they won't have any chance to take the opportunity. But once he encounters a Shinobi with an A-class ninjutsu or better, Naito will get defeated easily. He's invincible at the same level, but once he gets overpowered he can't even challenge. This is the kind of situation Sakumo's talking about. Naito completely ignored this issue. After all, there ain't a lot of shinobis who can cast an A-class or S-class ninjutsu. But now, Naito has grown to the point when he encountered one. So he must find a way to solve this problem. Then what do you think? Sakumo looked at Naito. Naito's expression changed. He took a deep breath and seriously said, "Before getting any stronger, I need to develop some more flexible moves to deal with these kinds of enemies." "Yes." Sakumo nodded, then patted Naito's shoulders and said, "You have a unique bloodline. No one truly knows your limits. I can give you some advice, but only you who can comprehend yourself." In the end, after he said a few words, Sakumo turned around, leaving after he took everyone with him. Only one person stood there, and it was Naito. He couldn't leave the battlefield, he didn't know how to return home. Lying directly on the bed, looking at the ceiling with a bit of indifference, Naito was lost in his own thoughts about his own ability. Thinking, that's what he needed. Sakumo's technique was kinda familiar. It's simple, very similar to the Reikiri of his son. He enhances his sword with his chakra to make it sharper. Although Naito's shock is powerful, it can also be stopped by such a ninjutsu. Naito believes that even if his shocks had the power of an A-class ninjutsu, Sakumo will still be able to cut it. These kinds of moves require a great chakra control, even higher than the brutal force technique. And with better chakra changing, and better quality, it can be very powerful. The ninjas who are below the level of a Junins are incapable of casting such a ninjutsu. Even Naito can't do it. Naito is thinking about this problem. The shock's range is very close at both offense and defense. And because of this, he will have a lot of problems at long ranges opponents. If he encounters Naruto or Sasuke, he will also suffer, because of the different variations they have on both the Rasengan and the Chidori. In order to win, he will have to overpower the Rasengan and the Chidori. If he can't, the only thing he will only have is Taijutsu. He won't have a powerful technique to fight back with. This is turned to be the limit of Naito. The problem is, can Naito think of a way to get rid of the rigid state when he uses the shocks and turn it into something similar to a ninjutsu or not? What about a temporary solution? Therefore, Naito began to consider another solution, that is, whether the power of the shocks can be condensed to a point. It's really possible to gather a large number of shocks at one point. Naito believes that the power of this technique will definitely surpass the Rasengan and the Chidori. He wanted to really try it, so he started the experiments immediately. Naito was too lazy to even go to the mountains. He started immediately the moment he reached the woods. Gathering a lot of power at one point is very dangerous, so Naito needed to be careful not to hurt his fists. He needed to consider his own health. A strong white halo started to appear around Naito's fist. The condensation was a little bit off, but it still gives off a scary atmosphere. Naito shook his head a little. This won't work, it's not any different than the usual technique I use, it's still not strong enough. Without any holding back, Naito gathered more power. The white halo suddenly became brighter. And under great control from Naito, that large halo started to shrink. The idea of this whole experiment is to see if he is able to condense all of that power at one point. However, suddenly when it was still shrinking, Naito's expression changed, and without any hesitation, he threw it away. The power went directly toward a big tree, then suddenly it exploded. Bang! The shock made a big hole at the center of the tree, then suddenly it collapsed. Naito's hand was numbing, even though he threw it away before he lost control. However, due to the enormous power he gathered at one point, it had side effects on his body. It's that difficult, huh? Looking at the collapsed tree, Naito felt a little bit disappointed. The damage was satisfying, but he couldn't handle the side effects. Moreover, the power of the shocks is abnormally a violent force, and it's extremely difficult to compress it. Unless you can give it an outside shell. Adding a shell. When he thought about this, an idea crossed Naito's mind. The Rasengan Naruto used in the original book was a technique that can be combined with any kind of nature. Adding the wind element to the Rasengan was normal, but later Naruto combined it with the Kyuubi's chakra and even with the yin-yang release. The Rasengan is an advanced form of a raw chakra control that involves changing the form and movement of chakra, and it can accept any kind of combined nature. Also, it's a very stable technique. In addition, it doesn't require any hand seals. It seems to be suitable for me. After thinking about it, Naito decided to practice the Rasengan. Even if he couldn't combine the shocks with the Rasengan after he learned it, it won't be a problem. The Rasengan itself is an A-class ninjutsu, it is worth learning. In this world, the Rasengan is still not created yet. It even took Minato 3 years to create it. But Naito is different. He already knew a shortcut of how to learn the Rasengan, including every detail about it. He almost knew everything about this technique. Moreover, it's indeed Naito has a small amount of chakra, but still, it's very powerful. The first stage is to gather the chakra in the palm of your hand. For Naito, this step was too simple, he didn't even have to practice to complete it. The next step was the water balloon. The user needs to spin their chakra in multiple directions at once. Once you learn that, the balloon will burst. In this step also, it didn't take much effort from Naito before he completely learned it. In the third step, the rubber ball, Naito encountered a bit of difficulty. However, this difficulty wasn't because of his controlling, his chakra was the problem. The amount of chakra he had wasn't enough. It's indeed a difficult matter for a Chunin to practice an A-class ninjutsu. Naruto and Sasuke were special cases. The first one had a strong and large amount of chakra, and the latter had an extraordinary ability to control chakra, and without forgetting that he was a genius himself. This step slightly blocked Naito's improvement. However, under the insistence of Naito, he could burst it. After completing this stage, the Rasengan now has been completed as a basic prototype. I can try to add the shocks now. With success, Naito managed to create the basic shape of the Rasengan. But this experiment is too dangerous, Naito can't be reckless. In this case, Naito decided to add a small amount of shock every time until he masters it. In the beginning, the Rasengan could really combine with the shock. And it seems like the chakra spun the forces together. But Naito didn't have any chance to express his joy. The Rasengan prototype was unstable and had a violent tearing strength. Naito was shocked, he immediately pressed it on a tree next to him. Boom! Once again another tree collapsed. Naito's hand was shaking, his whole arm was numbing. Fortunately, Naito was wearing the Anbu gloves protector, which helped him to not get injured. It seems the Rasengan prototype is not stable enough to handle the power of the shock. He took a deep breath, then he calmed down his thoughts and continued his practicing on the Rasengan. The next step took him so long. Naito wasn't the kind of guy who has a lot of chakra, so he couldn't practice a lot on the Rasengan. The moment he consumed his chakra, he will switch to physical training. After a period of physical training, he will switch back to the Rasengan training. Both alternate. Finally, after half a month, Naito learned the Rasengan. It was the first A-class ninjutsu mastered by him. A-class ninjutsu, most of them belong to the forbidden techniques level. Of course, there is a variation in terms of power. The same A-class ninjutsu can get much stronger or weaker depending on the ninjutsu's user. If Uchiha Madara's casts a fireball ninjutsu, it will be almost at the same power as an S-class ninjutsu. A normal Rasengan won't match it. In order to classify the power of an A-class ninjutsu, Naito had divided the class into 4 levels. Low level, mid-level, high level, and top level. The fireball Madara uses can be considered as a top level. And the following low, mid, high levels can almost correspond to the Rasengan, Udama Rasengan, and Senpu Udama Rasengan. Rasen Shuriken, which adds chakra's nature change to the Rasengan, rises to the S class. Of course, for Naito, Rasengan is enough. Creating the Udama Rasengan and Senpu Udama Rasengan was due to Naruto chakra quantity and also because it was suitable to his path. Although Naito's chakra is stronger than most of the children at his age, it's obviously impossible to be compared to Naruto. And without forgetting that the reverse Hakemon Tenku and Earthquake release is the path Naito chose for himself. The other things are all branches of the trunk. In a forest, Naito with one hand was practicing his chakra spinning. The form of the whirlpool looked visible to the naked eye, it was finally perfect. Naito didn't take the shortcut at the last step and practiced the Rasengan with just one hand, which is one of the reasons for the slow speed. Of course, this slowness is nothing compared to Naruto's. But it's also nothing compared to Minato, who spent 3 years developing it. Rasengan. Suddenly he pressed the Rasengan on a tree. Another poor tree got destroyed. In terms of power, the Rasengan is much stronger than Naito's shocks. Of course, the power of the shock can be used at both offense and defense, but the Rasengan can only be used on attacking. You can't judge the two by their power, but it depends on how they are used. Phew, I finally got it. He exhaled and wiped the sweat from his forehead, while he sensed the chakra on his body. A full Rasengan almost consumed half of his chakra. The consumption of the chakra is not normal. It's certainly not good news for Naito. However, fortunately, although the amount of chakra Naito had is not big, the speed of recovery is very fast. Soon, he got completely recovered. He calmed down his mind and brought up his full spirit. Naito finally gonna start to develop his own ninjutsu. After practicing the Rasengan, Naito's control got much better. Even his brutal force technique got better. Moreover, during this time, his control on his shock's power got better and better. It can't be comparing the way it was a half-month ago. Naito with a single hand formed the Rasengan. The Rasengan got a little bit bigger while he was injecting the shock's power. This time, due to Naito's powerful control, the power of the shocks didn't destroy the balance nor the spinning of the Rasengan. The Rasengan itself has a balanced structure, and the chakra constantly makes a high-speed flow around the center. Therefore, its center becomes an immovable point. Zizzy. With the infusion of the shocks, the Rasengan start to show some instability, but this time it was forced into balance by Naito. At the center of the Rasengan, a bright white halo gradually start to appear. As the light becomes brighter and brighter, the Rasengan started to send off a horrible atmosphere. Just by looking at it, you can feel how much violence the power it contained. Finally, at the last amount Naito injected into the Rasengan, the core was completed. At that moment the Rasengan and the power of the shock formed a strange resonance contact. To be precise, it seems that the high-speed spinning of the Rasengan increased the frequency of the vibrations. Not too stable, but it didn't explode directly. Is it completed? Even Naito got surprised. He prepared himself for a fail, but he didn't expect that he will succeed from the first attempt. This stuff. Looking at his hand, the center was very bright, while the chakra was spinning it and covering it from the outside. At the same time, it also formed a strange resonance, and it was emitting a terrifying atmosphere. Naito blinked. Do I press it? No. This thing is like a bomb in my hand, the power can be enormous, and then... Naito subconsciously moved his hand. He threw it. This thing can be thrown out. This time, even Naito didn't expect it. It was the same way with the Raisin Shuriken, it's no longer needed to be controlled, once it's ready you can throw it directly. However, the speed wasn't the same. Looks like it doesn't have the same speed. He couldn't even blink while he was looking at the Rasengan flying. Finally, it reached a tree. And directly hit it. Then as if nothing happened. Naito got shocked. Impossible. Even if it was only a Rasengan it should have blown the tree, not to mention that it was combined with the power of the shocks. A breeze blows. Silent. The tree in a second turned into a powder in front of Naito's eyes. Yes. The whole tree, directly into powder. The scene is shocking. What the? Even Naito got scared by this scene. There was no sound of an explosion and the whole process was silent. The shock got even stronger. It felt like heaven and earth eliminated each other. The tree looked like it was erased directly by a rubber. Naito looked for a while at the powder of the tree on the ground, then he took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Naito noticed that the chakra in his body got consumed by more than a half. It was almost all consumed. The rotation of the Rasengan changed to form of the shocks, and it created a new kind of power that destroys everything without sound. Naito thought that maybe the Rasengan and the shocks interact with each other at the moment of the impact, creating this enormous power. That enormous power, this ultra-high frequency, is due to the conversion of two contradicting powers. The power of this technique is almost at the same power as the AI sword technique, but the disadvantage is the movement speed is slower, and it will be really easy for people to escape it. If I want to use it, I will need to use sneak attacks. And the consumption is really too big for me. Naito needed to calm down and assign the advantages and disadvantages of this new Rasengan. At first, Naito classed it as an S-class ninjutsu in the terms of power. This is also the first S-class ninjutsu mastered by him. In addition, he temporarily decided that he will not use it only as a last choice. Unless it's a dangerous situation he will not use it. After all, his chakra got almost consumed just now, this consumption is a little too large. Although his ninjutsu was just a form of the original Rasengan, Naito still wanted to name it. This ninjutsu is called Earthquake Release, Hakai. T/N, Hakai, Destruction. This is the first high-class ninjutsu I have mastered, but it's definitely won't be the last. After that, Naito stopped developing his ninjutsu and needed to focus on other things. If he wanted to open the third gate, he will need to train more. All of his focus is on the reverse Hakimon Tonku, but he can't do it overnight. He developed Hakai to cover his weakness. Even if he encountered a very strong opponent, he will always have this trick to reverse the situation. However, Naito still needs to develop one more technique, and it's at the same level as an A-class ninjutsu. Although the Rasengan count as a 1, using it doesn't consume nearly half of his chakra. And once Rasengan was used, he could no longer use Hakai. So the Rasengan itself become unsuitable for Naito. Suitable for his style, has the same power as the shocks, and doesn't consume a lot of chakra. At the time when he was developing his new technique, Naito's control on the power of the shock got better, and he gradually discovered new things. He also has many new ideas. Using the rotation of the Rasengan, the frequency of the shocks become much higher, and because of that, it gained much power. That proves that it can get much powerful on its own. Naito's next attempt was to raise the power of the shocks on its own to gain the same power. But this obviously cannot be carried with his fist. so he needed a weapon. Naito made a fine steel sword at the Anbu department, so he can try this new idea and force his shocks into the sword. In fact, was just an imitation from Naito to be just like Sakumo. Naito stood up in front of an iron pillar. In Naito's hand, he was holding his new sword. In the next moment, he gripped the handle slightly and suddenly there was a strange fluctuation in the sword. There wasn't any white halo from the power of the shocks. Invisible and intangible. But it gives a hint of pressure. Cut. A flash of light. Oh! The sound of crushed metal was very uncomfortable. And suddenly in front of Naito's eyes, the iron pillar got cut by his sword. Phew! Nice! Looking at this scene, Naito nodded with satisfaction. This is the power that he developed, individually from the Hokage technique. Naito named it Shokuha. T/N, Shokuha equals shock cut. It wasn't the AI sword technique, but it had the same power. Due to his training on the Hokage, his shock got much power and it already reached the A-class ninjutsu. The advantage is that the consumption of the chakra is really low, it has more power than a normal shock, the effect of the brutal force is superb, there's no rigidity and it is more flexible. The disadvantages are that since it's a single attack, it can't defend against multiple direction attacks. If the face of this kind of attack he will need to match it with his normal shocks. At the same time, because it's not rigid and flexible enough, it has a second drawback, it cannot be released continuously. It's one-time blow every time. The high frequency he uses on every blow needs to be gathered again. And in addition to all of this, there's a third disadvantage, these high-frequency shocks even steel cannot handle it. Naito looked at his sword. I only used it a few times, and it's already broken. He had a sad expression. Naito already broke a lot of swords from the beginning of his training. Unfortunately, even if it was customized especially for him, it's extremely heavy and it is still unable to withstand the high frequency of the Shokuha. The Shokuha will directly destroy it. Looks like he will need to stick to these swords until he finds a better one. Steel swords are standard blades used by almost every shinobi. And it belongs to the category of swords. But if the ordinary swords cannot withstand the power of Naito, perhaps one of the 7 can. But those swords are not easy to get. Moreover, even if it can stand for a while, it will end up damaged after using it for a while. Or maybe he will need a self-repairing sword. Or maybe a sword like the Tsunade sword. The artifact swords surpass any other sword. However, it won't be easy to find one of the Tsunade sword. At this time of history, Orochimaru didn't find it yet. He will collect it later. However, this also gave Naito the opportunity, if the Tsunade sword fell into Orochimaru's hands, it will be more difficult to grab it. Well, I can use the information system in the Anbu department to look for any kind of information on the Tsunade sword, if not, I can always look for another one. Naito looked at the sword in his hand, then put on his back and walked away. Konoha Street. Naito was walking through the town toward the Anbu department to investigate the matter. The Tsunade sword is a rare item, even if he was an official Anbu member, they won't give him the information for free, he has to think of a way for himself. However, after wandering here and there, Naito couldn't find any kind of information. In other words, Naito's status is too low to be given by this kind of information. What a pain in the ass. Helplessly Naito started wandering in the street of Konoha again until he found himself in front of the equipment shop. Although this shop is a normal one, who knows, maybe he will find something. After he became an alternate member of the Anbu, Naito's daily expenses increased by Konoha. In short, he won't worry about food, clothing, housing, or transportation anymore. When he was walking down the street passing by some people, Naito noticed that the look on their faces wasn't any familiar to what it was before. Although the fact that Naito defeated Samue in the duel was covered and it didn't reach the village. But Naito won first place in the ninja school qualifying exam, and everyone heard of how he had beaten Minato. The genius Naito. Oh, I heard he's an outsider. Oh yeah, but in fact, his village got destroyed, he grew up in Konoha, he's one of us. Their eyes looked differently to Naito, it was no longer a look of hatred. Naito didn't expect that, but it seems Sarutobi secretly did something. For a Hokage, a word can change the atmosphere in the village. At the equipment shop, the owner's attitude has also changed from the last time. When Naito asked about the sword, the owner felt uneasy. Even though he had some weird stuff there, but it wasn't the same as the Tsunade sword, and Naito couldn't use it. In the end, Naito left helplessly again. He walked out of the store, and started walking toward the Anbu department again, but he saw something that made him wanna take a turn. It was a lively place. Missions Hall. He was slightly surprised. Looking at the sign above the door of the building, Naito immediately thought of the one at the Anbu department. The types of the Anbu missions are, of course, different. But in general, the Hokage's work gets easier every time someone takes a mission. Although there are thousands of ninjas in Konoha, there's also countless of tasks to deal with each day. How could each one of them be dealt by the Hokage personally? That's why there were always teams like the 7th team to deal with these missions. Naito slightly shook his head. He didn't plan to go in, but he was a little bit curious, so he wanted to take a glance. However, Naito didn't know that he will encounter an unexpected scene. There was a desk where the ninjas come to accept or submit missions. In one of the corners, Naito saw a familiar figure. Mato Dai. Didn't see him for a long time, so he was doing some missions. Naito stopped and smiled. In fact, most of the time when Naito went to the practice, he will find Dai and they will train together. And from time to time they will end up having a spar. But recently, Dai wasn't there, so he didn't witness the development of the brutal force and the Haiko. But that's only natural, after all, Dai is not an Anbu, he needs to do missions to get paid in order to meet his daily needs. At that time, Dai was arguing with some guy at the missions hall. This is a C-class mission, but the difficulty is compared to B-class missions, and for that reason, you won't give it to me. Dai's expression was incredibly angry. He's of course very confident about his strength, for that reason he picked this task to get the biggest amount of money. However, he can only get a C-class mission. Dai picked the most rewarded mission, but the person in charge told him that he cannot do it. Although this task is classified as a C-class and it doesn't require combat, but it's very likely that an unavoidable battle will occur. The grade is C, but the difficulty is B. This is no sense. You placed it as a C-class mission, then I'm more than qualified to pick it up. Otherwise, why didn't you just placed it as a B-class mission? Mato Dai was insisting on picking up this mission because after completing this one, he won't have to worry about life for a short time. Because this mission needs to be performed by a team, and you're alone, it will be very dangerous. The ninja in charge didn't show any pity for Mato Dai. In his opinion, Dai will need million years before he will be able to do this difficult mission. The failure rate was too great. And for that reason, the fail will end up in his death. Even if the ninja in Konoha looks down on Dai, they won't throw him to his death. Team. Dai had a sad look. At this time a voice came from his back. 2 people count as a team. Yes, wait, what? The ninja in charge responds subconsciously, but at the next moment, he reacted after he stared at the figure behind Dai. Hey, is that you, Naito? Dai turned back to see a familiar figure. He got surprised for a moment, then he greeted Naito with a smile. Naito smiled back and nodded to Dai, then he walked next to him so he could see the ninja in charge, and said, "So we're 2 now, there won't be a problem, right?" As soon as he said this sentence, not only the ninja but even Dai got surprised. Of course not. The ninja refused without hesitation, then said, "You haven't even graduated from the ninja school, we're busy here, don't disturb us, get out of here." That's it for this video, guy. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel. Also tell me your recommendations in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.